Welcome back, everybody. I have with me my friend and colleague, Kate Mariah of Gentle Goddess Reiki and Intuitive Wedding Doula, and she's going to interview me today. So go ahead, Kate.
Thank you so much, Alice, for asking me to do this. It's such an honor to be here with you. I'll start it off how you've been starting your other interviews. Tell us a little bit about your work.
Yeah, so my business is called Conversations Against Fascism, and it's a coaching and training business for progressive activists who want to make a difference to combat the rise of the extreme right in our country. And it's all about giving people the skills and grounding that they need to really be present and loving while making a difference, and just really getting how important it is to be effective in winning this fight to keep our country.
It's such important work. I'm so excited that you're doing this.
Thank you.
How did the Conversations Against Fascism idea start?
Yeah, so in 2016, I saw that we were facing a threat of literal fascism in our country. And I'm Jewish, and I was raised with the saying, never again. And I knew that meant that if I saw something coming, it was my job to stop it. Clearly not by myself, but that's a responsibility I was raised with. And yet my first reaction to Donald Trump's election was to be paralyzed, to think, okay, that we've got to do something, got to do something. But I didn't want to be part of tactics that I knew weren't that effective, like large rallies, which were great in the 50s and 60s, not so great anymore. Writing letters to senators can be effective when really targeted and coordinated. But a lot of times I end up feeling like I'm screaming into a void. And then the 2020 election happened, and there was this period of time where we didn't know what the result was. And it was terribly stressful for me because I had worked very hard to get Biden elected, despite thinking he was a poor choice. And then I still had to be putting out energy in waiting and wondering, is there going to be a recount? Wondering, is there going to be a coup? There eventually was a coup attempt, but a lot of people thought it was going to be closer to the election time. And so I just brought together a bunch of my friends on Zoom to talk about what was there for us, and brought in skills that I have from nonviolent communication, and several, mostly from nonviolent communication focusing, and some other, personal growth and emotional management techniques. And just, we really got in touch with what was there for us, what we were upset about, and what reality was that we could ultimately accept in service of taking action on. And it was just it was this beautiful, touching, inspiring experience that came out of, what had been this stressful, annoying, untenable experience. And that's when I realized that I was called to do this. I was called to hold space for activists to process what's there for us, process what's happening in the world, and create a space where we can be grounded and creative to make the difference that needs to be made here.
I so resonate with what you're sharing, and that sense of it was almost like a shock, so shocked that you're just frozen. And Yeah, it was shock, denial, like all I feel like I went through all of those pieces as well. And I think you're so spot on with, you got to get back in touch with yourself before you can help connect with anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, we can be active from a more superficial place and make a difference on ordinary issues.
Mm.
But this issue is just too big for us to come from someplace ordinary.
Will you talk a little bit more about that?
About the issue or about ordinary versus
About
not ordinary?
why this issue requires us to
Yeah.
come from a different place.
Yes. Why? It's a good question. It defeating Hitler cost the death of millions of people. These forces are very, very strong and very hard to beat. And it's not okay to lose. I mean, all these other things, it's also not okay to lose. And I know that, but yeah, I've said before, it's not a recycling campaign, right? And it's true, we face other existential issues. Climate change is existential on a multi-species level. War and colonization cause all kinds of death and suffering. War, colonization, torture. It's not the only important issue.
Yeah.
And yet, maybe it's because it's my mission, and maybe because I've seen the history. But this one hits harder and seems more intractable.
Yeah. Yeah, it really feels like that personal ancestral connection runs really deep. Yeah. So why this interview series? What's your focus for organizing this particular piece?
Yeah, it's really easy to feel powerless or, to be active and trying, but not really grounded. And my intention is for people to know they're not alone, feel empowered, know you really can make a difference, and leverage both love and power at the same time. We tend to think it's one or the other. And there's somebody I asked to interview, but he was not available. Adam Kahane has written a book about coordinating love and power. And just, it's an opportunity to draw attention to, like I said, the ways that personal growth approach can support progressive activism, rather than doing either in isolation, which seems logical, but really can leave either approach bankrupt.
Right. And also takes more time if you're jumping from one to the other. And
That's
time
true too.
is of the essence right now.
Yep.
It really is. So why the title, Finding Solid Ground in a Spiraling World?
Yeah, well, it not just with rising fascism, but in general, I think a lot of Americans are feeling, especially Americans who had the privilege to feel like the world was standing still before, are feeling like things are spiraling out of control. We've had this COVID pandemic. A lot of people have gotten used to it, but it's been very disruptive. We've had some uprisings that have gotten as far as they got and then been squashed or partially squashed. And then Supreme Court rulings, laws being put on the books that we never thought would be there. All of this on top of the pace of life under late stage capitalism that is already, very hard to manage. So this is, reaching out and handing people something to hold on to. It gives you a place to stand when you're doing the work you need to do and when you're living your life, because we all, I think there's a criticism of what was called the good Germans, people who just went about their lives and watched the Nazi project unfold. But we have lives and we have commitments to the people who we see on a daily basis, and we have commitments to our health and our finances, or maybe not our finances, but our physical well-being. And this holds space for all of it, like a way to be solidly clear in who you are and what your intention is, so that you can manage all of it and be with all of it, and even be with the horrors, because if we don't stop them, they're going to happen.
I love that image of having something to hold on to. I'm almost imagining like a pole in a gale, and I'm like hanging onto the pole as the gale is blowing me around.
And the thought is, you hold on to the pole with one hand and your other hand is in action.
Yeah. And that's the piece that for me is the place. Like, I'm sure for some people they're always in action and need grounding, and for some people they're always kind of like hiding from the issue because they're not sure how to take action, and it's pulling those people out and making those connections.
Yep. And I definitely work with both.
Yeah.
And strangely, the same work seems to be helpful for both.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Wow, it's just beautiful. So I think this question may be already addressed a little bit, but what makes this moment in history so crucial?
Yeah, it has largely been addressed, and there's a funny turning point where a lot of changes to how our democracy works are going to be coming up. I guess the one thing that I want to add about crucial moment in history, I think a lot of people have their eye on 2024 elections. Will Trump get reelected? Will Ron DeSantis get elected? And, I'm getting into partisan politics here, which it has not been a big part of this summit, but will somebody who's carrying the fascist program become president in 2 years is on a lot of people's minds. And, there are lots and lots of things in the administrative things in the works that will make that more and more likely. And that gives us 2 years of warning that the good Germans didn't have, because they didn't have the context to view things in. So what can we be doing? What can we be doing to create underground networks of hiding, targeted people? What can we be doing to establish relationships of, to get countries to accept refugees? What can we do with this time? And some people are doing personal things like, I renewed my passport, personal things for personal protection. And so this is our, probably our last chance to reverse the tide or stop the tide. And it's also our last chance to be prepared for to be building rafts, as my friend Sarah Ferrer once said. So
yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. I'm still soaking that in, the 2 years of mourning and preparation.
Mourning has to be faster so that we can I mean, morning is a huge part of my work. I never do an activity. I never have a discussion or workshop that doesn't include a few minutes of morning.
Yeah,
And we need to accelerate our morning so we can move on to the next thing.
yeah, yeah. And from my own experience with grief, like the only way to really accelerate the morning is to address it
To dive
with
into it.
other people.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it really needs that community support in my experience.
It makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for holding the space for all of us and bringing our attention and awareness and our aptitude for change and holding love and power, bringing that here and lifting it up so that we are seeing it and moving towards something that we do believe in. I feel like this is just such an important moment in time, and your gift is exactly what we need. So thank you so much for
You're welcome.
creating this series and allowing me to be here with you in it.
Thank you, Kate. Great to be with everyone and everybody who's been here all week. It's just been so wonderful to be with you. And I hope I see you. I hope I see you in another container. You've got there's a link for my free gift, and there's also a link to book a conversation with me. So thank you. And thank you for your openness. Thank you, Kate. Bye, everybody.